So everybody, thank you so much for being here. This is Consulting. It ages you with Tom Ahern, but it's going to be funny, tongue-in-cheek stuff. We are both going to be having sort of a back-and-forth kind of conversation about consulting, and I'm going to let Tom kind of tell me when to jump in, and I will. But we're really here to hear more from him. And so for those of you who don't know who Tom Ahern is, he has authored 4 well-received books about donor communications, one of which I highly recommend, called Keeping Your Donors, which is my favorite one that he and Simone Joyaux wrote together. He's also written How to Write Fundraising Materials That Raise More Money, Seeing Through a Donor's Eyes, and Making Money with Donor Newsletters. I haven't read these other 3, but gosh, I would like to. So he's a wonderful writer. I love his writing style. And of course, he's also one of the most famous fundraising consultants in the entire U.S. Each year he delivers dozens of workshops internationally as well. He's spoken at conferences in the Netherlands, Belgium, Australia, New Zealand, Italy, Slovakia, as well as across the U.S. and Canada. And his clients, as you can see here, include many interesting people such as Boston Children's Hospital, Anchorage Museum, University of Chicago, International AIDS Vaccine Initiative, Gettysburg Foundation, and many others. And he began consulting in 1990, and you switched, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time seeing the slides here. I think it's just because my screen is too big. Tom, do you want to say anything else about sort of your history with consulting?
Checkered. It's in one word, checkered. Well, it always is. Checkered. Let me see what the next slide is. That's my co-author, Simone Joyaux, and she's holding up a sign. Now, the sign she's holding actually may be of interest in the context of what we're talking about today, because a client, a nonprofit client of hers, she specializes in beating back bad boards, gave her that because Simone had, produced change, which is her specialty. And so be a unicorn. It's good advice for anybody who's going into consulting. You don't want to be a donkey. You don't want to be a beast of burden. You want to be a unicorn. You want to be this magical creature that comes in and actually makes something better happen. That's always the goal for top consultants, and if you don't want to be a top consultant, I don't actually recommend this as a career, because I think it is, it's very demanding on people. I mentioned to Mazarine that today was a pretty typical day of consulting, and I would share it with you, so you can see what happens. One thing is we had a proposal in. It was 2 parties, 2 professional parties. We had the Agents of Good, who are based up in the Toronto area, Canadian, and excellent, fabulous, one of the best.
Love those guys. Love them.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah.
One of the best creative houses. When I look around the world and look at, say, okay, here, who are the top performers? There's Blue Frog based in London. There's Alan Clayton and Ken Burnett over in the UK. There's Sean Triner down, and Jonathan Grapsis down in Australia. There is Jeff Brooks in the United States and some other people. But up in Canada, my favorites, and I know a lot of the people up there, Harvey McKinnon is great, Stephen Thomas is great, but I like working and being around Agents of Good. Oh, I should mention Fraser Green up there. He's great. But anyway, we got together. We thought, here's perfect. And I had been contacted by a hospital in Canada. I won't say where, but they are, a children's hospital, which is, it's kind of like when a children's charity comes in the door, you go, oh, well, this is going to be easy, because children are almost impossible not to raise money for. You'd have to, there's got to be a way, but I don't know what it is. Children tap into something in biology called the cuteness factor, which is all built into all of us unless you happen to be a psychopath, and they are they are defined by their lack of things like responsiveness to the cuteness factor, or just not no visible empathy. But the rest of us, the quote-unquote normal ones, we have this cuteness factor. Go to Wikipedia if you want to see what the science on the cuteness factor is, and it will lay it all out. Basically, we are responsive to something that seems to us to look cute, and there's a whole profile for this. So some babies, all babies kind of look cute, but some babies look cuter than other babies, and it's basically math. High forehead, big eyes, round face, some other things. And when we see that, this is the best part, it triggers dopamine. So we have this reaction that is drug-based in our brains. A good drug, a reward drug, is saying, help this child. And that's built in from nature. So we're a social species. We take care of our young. The cuteness factor is a real thing in biology. So, come in and let me raise money for kids. Fundraising, generally speaking, is not ever easy. But if you have to do it for kids, you get one problem licked right away. Anyway, so this is Children's Hospital, and they came to us. The director of development came to us and asked if we would, in fact, kind of lay our services on the line, write up a detailed proposal, do an audit, do some other things, blah, 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 and, kind of recreate, I think, the direct mail program there. But that director of development did not have final say. And I actually, over the years, all of you out there who want to be consultants, I've learned to ask my people who are coming to me with inquiries, like directors of development, whether they have final say. Because if they don't have final say, frequently I will come up on the rocks with whoever is above them who does have final say, and that's indeed what happened here. So the director of development from this children's hospital in Canada, wonderful children's hospital, came to us and said, I desperately want to work with you guys because I know you're doing amazing things for this other hospital. And in fact, that's what Agents of Good were now known for. They had done a terrific program for Humber River Hospital, and this new hospital wanted to kind of tap into them. They wanted to get into donor centricity, which is one of the things I focus on and kind of specialize in. And I do a lot of work for hospitals, very successful. The direct mail always works. We're, setting records. She knew all this. She knew our background, and she wanted to work with us. And notice the pronoun. So she then brought our very elaborate, detailed, went on for pages proposal, where we laid it all out, not in foggy consultant's language, but in very clear terms, what we were going to propose doing for them. And the boss said no. The male boss said no. No, they weren't really ready for that. But it did launch some, she said, interesting discussions about what they were ready for, so I suppose that's a small advantage. So that was a turn down. At the same time, I'm writing. So today I had assigned, and this is what I do, you time manage the way you want, but I am not a good time manager, and I would, if my spouse were in the room, she would confirm that. It's the paperwork and all the rest of it, or even thinking about the management of a business, just irritates me or bores me or makes me go to sleep or makes me ill or something. I just don't want to do it. So time management is not good. However, I do kind of, roughly structure my day by saying, what's the most important thing I have to get done today, and I will do that. And I'm like, this great video about the difference between men's minds and women's minds, the way they think. And the guy talks about how men put everything in a box, and that box can't touch any other boxes. And when that box is out, no other boxes can be out. You just have one box. I'll focus on that. That's all I'm going to think about. And that's the way kind of I am. So anyway, my box today was I'm writing direct mail. So we all got the turn down from the hospital because her boss said no. Then I'm writing this direct mail. At the same time, I have a deal with people who are my clients for direct mail. The deal is they will not change a word of what I write. It's called the verbatim rule. Now, if I make a mistake, it's a factual mistake, like I get a number wrong, I can change that. But I'm talking about the rest of the language. So I'm not trying to imitate the voice of the CEO or any of the stupidity you hear. I'm writing the strongest letter I can write based on 15, 20 years of training and a deep immersion into the dark arts of psychological persuasion. And I'm really not, this is a hard sell letter. And it's great. I finish it and I go, wow, that may be the best letter you've ever written. I send it off to the client. Now, the deal is they will just run it. But here's what I totally 110% expect to happen. They will get this in their office. She will show it to her male boss or bosses, all of whom are scientists, and they will say, holy crap, what is this? Because what it is 100-proof direct mail written by a well-trained professional, and it is powerful. It jumps off the page, grabs you by the throat, and shakes you until money falls out of you. And they're going to go, we can't send that out. People will complain. Well, actually, they think that's a negative. If you're not getting complaints from direct mail, you're probably not pushing hard enough. So actually, that's a positive, but that's something that they wouldn't know because they're not direct mail professionals. What they are is scaredy pants. And so they will probably say, no, we can't send this out, which means to leave a ton of money because this thing was a winner. I mean, it would blow up mailboxes all over. And, they're just going to talk themselves out of it. I know they will. So I expect that, but that's fine. I'm going to charge them anyway. So they'll pay $2,000 for a letter they'll never send. Then I get an email, again, it's a typical day, from a client in Santa Fe. And we're going to start on this project. It's an institutional client. And we're going to start on this project. We're going to really bring them up into the social media age, into the digital age. We're going to do all sorts of things which have to do with building a bigger, broader, thicker, more supportive base of donors. And so it's a good thing. It's going to have lasting results for, forever if they don't, screw it up and step away from it. It's the basis of a long-term fundraising program at a certain place that hasn't had such a thing in the past. So we had to go through some creaky old bureaucracy that, wanted things from me as a consultant, like $1 million bond and so forth. And I said, I'm not going to, really? You're kidding. This is a $5,000 contract. I'm not going to do any of that stuff. And furthermore, there's only one of me in the world, so, it's either me or they were talking about competitive bidding. It's crazy. Because this is going to be totally custom. This was not like, some off-the-shelf product I was giving them. I was consulting, real consulting, phone, do a little writing, some other stuff, just, try to make them a ton of money over time. It takes time, like 3 years at a minimum. And she's hot to trot. We finally got the bureaucracy done. I'm now good for them. I've got my own number. And so I'm official, and we can just get started. And I had told her that this wasn't going to take, this is going to take 3 years and wasn't going to start fast because I have so much that I am pre-committed to that I couldn't take on a new client for at least a couple of months. But I would try to squeeze her in here and there as I had time. So what am I getting? I'm getting emails where people, she's in Santa Fe tapping her nails saying, well, let's get going. And I fully understand. I'd feel the same way. I used to do this kind of project management like she has to do now, and I'm her vendor. but I'm not responsive to it because I can only do you when I can get around to do you, and I can't do her for another 3 weeks. I am leaving right now, tomorrow, to go to France for that period of time. All of that. So that's a typical day. You know, you got an antsy client. You got to turn down on a proposal. I don't actually do many proposals, but like 1 or 2 a year. Mostly people come to me and say, "We want you to do this," and they've already figured out I'm the right person, and they have a project they want me to complete for them. But you know, so we get the proposal turned down. It would have been a ton of money. I think they had $50,000 on the line. The direct mail, I'm pretty sure that client's going to end up paying for something they won't use because, well, again, the technical term is scaredy cat. And then I get an email from Oxford, University of that Oxford, saying, "We're fans, and we want you to come over and train our entire development office. How much?" So, you know, that's a typical day. You do some work, you get an inquiry. If you're at my level, you get a turn down, you get antsy clients sending you emails, and, you know, there you go. It's a typical day. So, anyway, anything to say, Mazarine? You out there?
Yeah. My typical day is very much different than yours as a consultant. I spend a lot of it writing. Sometimes I take a bike ride, go to yoga. Today is obviously, in the last week, has been a very uncommon week for me. I've never done this before. But you know, usually a week includes doing at least one webinar for people because that's a wonderful way to get known as a consultant, and it's also a great way to build names for your email list, as you know, Tom. And it's also a way to make money if people are willing to pay you, you know, which is nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love webinars. Webinars
oh, yeah, me
cool.
too.
Webinars are cool.
Yeah.
Well, so just like Mazarine, so my week, I mean, I was just talking about one day. My week, started with Monday and Tuesday, both days. I had scheduled webinars. I'm doing them for Kivi LaRue Miller, Nonprofit Marketing Guide. And this was brand new. We were into a new topic for me, which was all things digital. You know, so writing that had to do with your website, both, you know, the big one and your mobile version, and Facebook, and emails, and one other thing that I don't recall. But anyway, it was basically integrated communications in the digital world. And so, you know, it's a new product. It took me 4 years of research before I got to the point where I felt I really had something. I had collected enough good information that I could actually say something worth hearing, and that's what we did the last week and this week. So I'm very much dependent on webinars, and just you know, because you might be interested, all of you who are thinking about making money from consulting, that webinar brought in about $5,600 for me, total fees from the people that attended. We have 3 different levels of pricing for these webinars, which was a good return. Not the highest. I've made almost $10,000 in a day from, well, not in a day, I should say. The webinars, the way it's done with Kivi is you do 2 one-hour webinars, then you do personal coaching with people that buy that much higher priced level of, you know, involvement. And through that, you know, it takes about altogether 5 days of webinars and coaching to get through it. I've made $10,000, you know, which is great. It's why I drink so much, because I have so much time on my hands. You know, I'm making $10,000 in a short period of time, and then it's like I'm lazy, and I think I don't want to do this anymore. I'll just, you know, knock off work for another 3 weeks.
But you don't. You say you will, but you don't necessarily. I know. I mean, one of the things about being a consultant in this field is like, yeah, I should really take a vacation. And then you take one for a couple of days, and then you're like, but I have to get back on it. Yeah, Tom, do you want to go through some slides? Go right ahead.
Yeah, I'll go through some slides. Yeah, Mazarine's right. You don't actually. It sounds like you should, but Mazarine is like a third my age. I don't, and I want to die at my desk. I don't care. I like working, and that's actually something. I just saw research yesterday. They were talking about the baby boomers, and I really hate talking about the baby boomers, even though I am one. And they were talking about they won't retire, but they, it wasn't because maybe you'd be thinking they need the money, although the money is fine. The reason they weren't retiring is they actually liked working. Now, not everybody is in that frame of mind, but consultants actually often are. We know dozens, maybe hundreds of consultants, and they, generally speaking, if they're good, they like what they're doing. And they feel, everybody needs purpose in life, and they feel like they have one. Anyway, how did we get here from, where we are today, getting Oxford University of Oxford, I should say, that's the proper name, to, getting in touch, asking for my help, and telling me they're a big fan of mine. How do you get that far? I certainly didn't start there. I came out of college thinking I would be a poet, and then I'd probably die by 30 because you can't make a living at that. And but basically all I wanted to do was write. That's all I wanted to do all my life from the time I was a child was write. So give me a way to make a living with words. And the way that comes up, or that appeared to me after a series of jobs, was to become a copywriter, a marketing copywriter, a sales copywriter, somebody who could sell with words. It combined everything I really cared about. I like language. I like writing short things. And the only question was, what do you have to offer? Because consultants, well, what are you really selling? You're selling something I don't already know. So you have to be a little bit ahead, 15 minutes ahead of your client, somebody said. I was given great advice. I'm going to share with you what that was because it actually made my career relatively predictable. One piece of advice is what you see up on the screen. Read an hour a day in your field, whatever you decide to specialize in. And fundraising is a very big area. As I'll point out later, I think, looking back, that becoming a specialist as soon as possible is a much more lucrative road to go. But anyway, you read an hour a day, and if you do that every day, let's say every working day, but then for me that's all 7 days. I work every day, read an hour a day. After 3 years, the guy said, you'll be a national expert. And he was right. See, most of your clients read nothing. If they're AFP members, they might flip through the magazine. If they subscribe to a couple of blogs, like, say, Jeff Brooks' Future Fundraising Now, or Seth Godin, his blog, both fabulous. I do subscribe to them, and I read them religiously. But that may be all the information you're getting with the occasional workshop if you go to a conference or something. That's where consultants come in. You, as a consultant, your main job is to know more than your client, and you have to keep reading in order to do that. So this is a documentary photo of my office, a couple of weeks ago. What my shelves all look like. And
okay, Tom, one person's just on the phone, so I'm going to describe what we're seeing here, which is a ton of books. And they're just everywhere, and there's a chair. But you can see that these are well-thumbed, well-loved books, and they're frequently referred to. There's books used as other bookmarks. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful sight to behold. Anyway, that's why I describe that for people.
yeah, and it's pretty. I mean, I didn't certainly start in an office like this. My wife and I shared an office for a long time. Not a great recipe for domestic harmony, I got to tell you. The weird thing is she swears like a sailor, not me. But so I was happy to get my own space. And we have a friend who's a very good architect, and we said basically, get the third floor of our house, has a very tall roof, so it's got a lot of space up there. Can you make an office that will improve my productivity? And he said, and he actually did. What he did first is observe how I actually preferred to work. And when he had kind of deciphered that, then he created an office that gave me what I needed in order to enhance the way I already worked. And what he did is give me something like 25 linear feet of desktop. So I sit in the midst of piles and piles of projects, but they don't, they're all individual, and they have, things like labels on them and stuff, so I know what they are at a glance. They have signs on them sometimes that say alarm when there's a deadline that has to be met very, very soon, next couple of days, stuff like that. And this, well, not everybody can see this, but if you could see it, what you'd see is my earliest stuff, which was getting trained by Jerry Hunsinger as a direct mail writer, and now you can get all that for free from Sofii.org, SOFII.org. He's got like 86 lessons up there. I paid for that, but there it is, and books. I counted one day just to see, and it's way over 400 how-to books in my office. So, which is, part of them I never look at again, because some of them are what you do in the early days of being a consultant. Basically, anybody comes to your door and says, "Can you do this?" You say yes before you actually know whether you can or not, and then you go find a book that explains how to do it. I mean, but I'm not, those are the early days. You take anything that will come in that will pay you money, and then later you get pickier and more specialized. So let's see what we got here. Well, that's what I've been talking about. You sell what you know. So Mazarine asked me to recommend. I learned from a book how to run a consulting business. It's so far back in time that it was actually pictographs on a stone cave in southern France. It was tapes. I was listening to tapes I got from the library. Anyway, I've heard that this book, I haven't read it, so I'm not, going to give you a huge glowing review here, but I have heard from other consultants that this book by Peter Block is actually worth having. But you need some book, basically. You need somebody to give you a sense of what's the right way to run this business, and what did I learn? Well, I'll show you how to do your hourly billing pricing in a moment, but one of the things I learned was self-promotion. Because you have to, and I would, at the time I went into consulting, I did leave a very toxic work environment, the kind of place that would kill you. In a few years, if you stayed, heart attack, high blood pressure, probably, maybe unlicensed gun in the cafeteria. It was just the kind of place you ended up hating to go to. But so consulting, certainly was an improvement over that. But I saw myself as not just shy, but kind of, dangerously close to mentally ill shy. I just really didn't like, talking to strangers all that much, etc. But you do have to self-promote, and the worst thing you can do is cold calling. Worst, absolute worst. The worst because it's brutal, and you don't pick up a lot of business that way. So you don't do it if you can avoid it, and I certainly wanted to avoid it. So I listened when they said, here's how you become a recognized expert. You start by writing stuff and publishing it in trade magazines. Then you do speaking and in front of audiences of the right people, targeted professionals like yourselves. You have a blog now these days, which is a weblog. You publish a newsletter, and when I started, that meant you published a physical print newsletter, but I waited on that one. I waited on that one until digital was pretty common. So around the year 2000, I started publishing an emailed newsletter. Very crude at first. All I used for content was stuff I'd already developed. And I had gotten into the psychology of marketing and persuasion. So I was talking to people about things like the so-called 4 personality types and so forth. And I know how to write. I've been every kind of writer you can think of, and including being a magazine journalist, which meant that you learn to write for a general interest audience and keep them entertained, because then if you didn't, they'd stop reading. So I could write an interesting thing, but at first I wasn't writing interesting stuff. I was writing technical stuff for other, kind of nerdy people in the donor communications world. And then there's books. So you start with writing a little bit, getting that published however you can, and then eventually you have your book as you have something more larger to say to a trade audience. So in our case, fundraisers, or maybe even executive directors, or people that are in communications, marketing, who have to do fundraising stuff as well. Once you have a book, you go into a very different league in terms of how much you can bill, for one thing. And in terms of your visibility. So you become far more desirable, for instance, as a speaker at conferences. Now, I get paid. There are some conferences I will go to and speak for free because they are important international conferences, and I love the people involved in planning them, and we have a ball. So Australia fits that. International AFP, which was just in Baltimore, fits that. Going up to Toronto for the Canadian AFP conference is fabulous. IFC in the Netherlands can be fun, and so forth. But the rest of them I get paid when I go, and the typical payment is $5,000 to stand up and do stuff for the day, no matter whether you use me for 75 minutes or 3 hours. I wouldn't have ever been able to get there if I had not started speaking, for instance, back when I really, like 15 years ago. Actually, my first gig as a speaker was because somebody canceled at a local AFP chapter annual conference, and they said, "You do marketing, right? Can you come in and just, stand in front of people and talk for like an hour?" Which I did. And it truly, of course, was horrible. And it took about 5 years of being just, really bad to horrible. But I'm diligent. I try to do my research, and I kept bringing in more and more and more and more information. The same stuff I was using during the day as a copywriter, basically. So anyway, there's that. There's my stupid web blog, The Little Words Mean the Most. And this is where I dump crap from the road, basically, because I travel all the time now, and I see things, and I have interesting encounters. I just write about them. There's one place to create a sense of who you are. This is my emailed newsletters. It's a very typical recent issue, and this is just the very top of it. So there'll be a bunch of small items on the side, again, all written to kind of magazine journalist standards, so that they're quite readable, they're fun, they're light. Yeah, I mean, light seeming, even though the topic can be serious. This is my website, which, sucks, basically, from a graphic designer's standpoint. But I don't care, because I don't need it to be any better. It's, it hangs on by a technological thread that would be easy to break and so forth, but it's got the information I need to have out there. Mostly I do not promote to find new clients now directly. They find me because they've heard me speak, they've read the books, they've seen what I've done for other clients, and they like what I've done for those other clients, particularly things like cases for capital campaigns, which is a big part of my business. Here's Mr. Brooks, Future Fundraising Now. This is a great book. Why do I have this up there on the screen? Can't imagine, but it's one of those things. I sort of run my copywriting part of my business based on 30 or so rules from Confucius. And Confucius can be anybody. Jeff Brooks is definitely one of my Confucius gurus, and so you learn from him. I want to say, this was great. Last year, a consultant I know very well, she had been in business since 1988, and all of a sudden, the phone wasn't ringing. I was like, what? All these years, you've got it. You should have it nailed by now. And but it just reminded me again that consulting is, people call it maybe cyclical, but I'm not sure you can determine how that cycle is driven. It doesn't always sustain itself. You will encounter lulls, and I can just look back over I started around 1990, so now it's 25 years. I can look back and say every lull was precious, and I should have used more of them better, but I have become good at saying, well, I'm not too busy right now. It's time to get that thing done that you've been thinking about doing for a long time. So you write your book. You can write a book. I can tell you, you can write a how-to book on a defined topic in about a month if you stick to it. It's not that big a job. Every year or two, I assign myself something to learn. This last few years, it's been keeping my nose deeply into what's happening with digital. I finally, and this is why I finally came out and put together a complete show for the public, was this year, while I was in Australia, I was treated to a case study by the insiders of one of the world's first, only, and if not only, most profitable Facebook-only fundraising programs. They use only Facebook, and they make $500,000 a month for a small animal welfare charity based in Bangkok, Thailand, which shows you what you can do with the internet you can't do with direct mail locally. You can reach, all the animal bleeding hearts and weeping hearts that are out there, and in fact, they're the biggest donors to this particular charity, which is called SOI, S-O-I, which means street dog. The biggest percentage of donors are women over 45 in the United States, and that's something they were able to do through Facebook. Now, in case you think that's easy, no. They have to, they have a full-time staff doing nothing but Facebook postings. There's a new posting up every 2 hours. They advertise heavily on Facebook, blah, blah, blah. But you can make money. Now, when I learned that actually turned, I've been waiting for that to happen because my business is about making more money for my nonprofit clients through, better writing, better copywriting, better communications, better donor centricity, some other tricks we have. And I can, pretty consistently improve your revenue. What I was always looking for is, tell me how this is going online. How's the digital side of things? Is it making money yet? And until this year, 2014 I should say, I didn't see a ton of proof. I saw the occasional, thing that would happen, like the ice bucket challenge, stuff like that. Those are great, but I couldn't see a routine way to make this happen for a typical charity. So I'm not into, well, it happened once and we hope it'll happen again. I'm into, how do we do this the next time? And so I wasn't seeing a lot of digital. I didn't see a lot of success. I knew it was growing. You could see that, the data is clear. And, things like this year, over half of the people in their prime giving years, which is age 55 and older in the United States, will own a smartphone, so walking around with this device in their hand, as am I, for the first time. And so, things are changing. So it was time. It was just time. I knew that Facebook now could be used successfully to raise money by a typical program, not by some wild-ass, it went viral thing. You can't build a program on it went viral. Too unpredictable. But so I'm looking for predictable results. I'm looking for a program that can be put in place. Now you can raise money with Facebook. Now everybody has a smartphone, which means you better start paying attention to it, because 65% of emails are answered on a smartphone, not on a desktop computer. So every couple of years, as I said, I give myself an assignment. What do I need to learn? And the reason I'm constantly doing this is not just to stay in front of my clients, but because you can charge way more as a specialist. As a generalist, yeah, you know, who knows? If you're competent, maybe you can charge $150 an hour. Super competent, you know. But as a generalist, I can charge $250 an hour, which is great. My real goal is to work as few hours and make as much money as possible, because that allows me to do these other things. I want to write the books. It's not being done just because it is a good thing for me to do from a PR standpoint. You also, you know, you develop a network over time. I have loads of friends that are just, you know, kind of sort of like me. We're all in the same business. We're doing fundraising communications, and we are thrilled to talk about it with each other. You know, it's a and we share. I get, you know, I never wanted to build a business. I wanted to have a consulting practice that would support me well, and that's what I have. And now what I don't want ever is employees. So what happens when I get more inquiries than I can handle, which is now happening regularly? I have these people I know who are qualified. In fact, lots of them are better than I am. It's like, not only am I going to not be able to do your work, but you're going to thank me for not doing your work, because I'm going to pass you along to somebody who actually will do it better than I could do. So you want that. There's agents of good up in Toronto. They often say interesting things.
I agree. Having a network of referral partners is so key, and that's why I have at the bottom of my website and while doing fundraising, I have a list of find a consultant, because there's a lot of people that do things that I don't do, and I want to help you connect with them. Like capital campaigns, I do not know, but Gail Perry and Andrea Kitzheit do know. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And major gifts, not my jam. But Amy Eisenstein has written 3 books about it. That is her jam. So
yeah.
I refer people to her. So there you go.
There you go. No, Mazarine, perfect. Okay, so, you know, one of the things that Mazarine talked about is people want to get into part-time consulting. And I've already revealed I'm working 7 days a week. So I don't have any idea whether you can do part-time consulting. The problem with part-time consulting, in my view, is the part-time part that you don't want to invest in your consulting practice. How do you become this, you know, useful world-class expert, which is all I ever wanted to be? I wanted to be the best at what I did. Can you be second best or third best and not put in all that time and be part-time and still make a decent living? I don't know. I think what it means is if you want to do part-time consulting, you're going to have to get used to part-time pay, and you're going to have to get used to part-time reputation. Because I don't think you're going to build an incredible reputation on being part-time. You know, we don't have part-time secretaries of state. We don't have anything that anybody cares about where they say, oh, and the most important part was they only put in 20 hours a week. So I just don't know. I have no answer for that. What do you need to live? How do you figure out your hourly rate? Well, it's easy. That's what I learned in my original training. Decide what you want to live on. So if you are in your neck of the woods, so you need $50,000 to live a normal middle-class life, then take that $50,000, that's your gross, divide that by 50, which will be the weeks you work minus 2 for vacation. Divide that by 20, and that's the number of hours you can actually bill in a week. That's one of the very first things I learned about consulting, is that you will never bill, on average, more than 20 hours a week. And that has proven to be true year after year after year. So I can say that the research, and he was working, the guy that made the statement in my original training, the guy that made the statement was a consultant to consultants. He did national surveys every year, and he found that no matter what you were consulting in, whether it was nuclear engineering or fundraising, you were going to bill 20 hours a week. And you were going to work a lot more than that, but the rest of it was going to be, tied up in paperwork, doing things for free like writing, creating proposals, doing that book, advising people, seeking work, marketing, all the rest of it. So that's how you determine your hourly rate. And as I just said, and here's, let me see, so those are the last few slides. Let me go back to that. There's just a couple of things there of any interest. We did that. Okay, this. I'm not a consultant as entirely. In other words, don't go in and just talk to people about stuff or deliver reports and things like that. I'm a copywriter, and I have to succeed. I'm a direct mail writer. That's, they talk about the gladiatorial contest. That's where marketing is given a sword and say, here, kill your dinner. If you are a practitioner, you will look at this very differently because you're always learning on the job, basically, from being a practitioner. So that's why I like that part. And how do you decide who's a good client? My own feeling, I started by giving my services away because, frankly, nobody would pay for them. But now they do. And so it was, a good investment in the long run. And this is why you succeed as a consultant, because your clients basically do your marketing for you. They turn into lovers who are always trying to sell you to other people. So, Mazarine, what do we got? The timer went off.
Yeah. So so what I would say is it's a really good idea to have your clients become your advocates, but you can't start there, right? And so one of the ways that I started doing webinars for a number of different groups for free, and then I started getting paid, though I still do them for free if it makes sense for me. And so one of the things that's changed since Tom first started being a consultant is that webinars can help you get known and help you get clients much, much more easily than depending on word of mouth. Though word of mouth is the best, absolutely. What do I charge for a webinar? Somebody asked. Depends on the client. So for example, just to give you an example, I was part of a virtual conference in January, which some of you may or may not have been on, for Alan Sharp, and he did a virtual fundraising conference, and I had a recording on there. Well, somebody saw my name in that list, and then she didn't even watch my presentation. She just said, oh, I saw your name on this list. I'd like you to do a webinar for us. Would $500 be okay? And I said, sure. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's great. And so it turns out they're a national organization. I'm not going to tell you who they are, but they are pretty big. And I've done other webinars for other national associations as well. And you make between, $350 to $500 a webinar. Some people charge less. Other times, if they don't have a fee structure in place, I say let's just split the money. So whatever you're charging for it, you just give me half, and we'll call it good. Other people might have different price structures. You just have to, it just depends. Another thing I'd suggest is having a contract. I know Tom was going to talk about how he doesn't like having contracts. It's come to my attention. People have told me that I need to have contracts. So this particular nonprofit that was a national one made me sign a 17-page contract to present for them. So that's just FYI. And what contracts do I use? Well, you have to make up your own. So there are templates online that you can find. Any advice on charging for a direct mail letter, said Heather. Tom, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, sure. Here's the deal. They all come out to be like $2,000 or less. Well, for smaller charities. I mean, if you get into doing mail for some national charity, for instance, I've written for Audubon National. You can charge value pricing, which you might say, okay, what would they bring in for this? Therefore, I will. I'm working on that actually, but the normal way is just by the hour, and the typical, if you're competent and so you're not screwing around, wasting the client's time, you should be able to get it done, I would say, in $1,500 to $2,000 worth of time. Now, I as I mentioned in passing, charge a lot for my hour, but I'm so fast, I can almost not make money. I just wrote a direct mail letter today. It took 6 hours. I wrote another one or two yesterday. It took 5 hours. It's getting to the point where if I only charge by the hour, I'm not making all that much money. So I have to go back to value pricing. If you're going to if this letter is going to go out and bring in tens of thousands of dollars, then it's worth, it is worth a couple of $1,000.
Yeah, and the other thing that you can do now, which you couldn't do when Tom started out, was you can help people write year-end appeal emails, which is something that some of you may have seen me offer at the end of last year. And I've been pretty successful with those. I charged $250 to write 3 emails for people, which some people told me was pretty low. But I just wanted to see who would take me up on it and how much I could make them with that. And I was pleasantly surprised that, some people had never done emails before, so we really didn't have a benchmark to go from. But they definitely recouped their investment between, 2 or 3 or 4 times more than what they paid me. Some people made, $4,000 with it, so quite a bit more. There's some other questions here. How do you set your fee schedule? Well, like Tom said, it really depends. And if you have enough, I'd say, if you put enough time in your marketing, you can charge more, right? Just like Tom said, if people believe that you can actually do the work and that you're good at it. When I was first starting out, I, just like Tom, took whatever job I could with different clients that were probably not very good clients, but, it gave me just a stepping stone. So if you work by the hour, you can charge $150, like you said, or more. It really depends on how fast you are. Right. So one person asked up here, right here we go. I left a career to begin a consulting business and because it had become a toxic workplace. Taking time to define my specialty and being very particular about who I'm willing to work with. Cray-cray or smart move? Would you like to take that, Tom?
Being very particular? I didn't find in practice that being very particular got, paid my mortgage. So you try to be particular, but okay, let's say in 2008, I started turning away direct mail clients who did not agree to my verbatim rule that they would not change a word. So, 2008, that was 18 years into my consulting career, so it took a while. You have to be so bulletproof in their minds, not in your mind, that they actually think that's a good idea, that they don't get to change any words. They're very, people, they meddle if you're doing things like communications because everybody assumes they know something about it because they can read and write, and they don't. Yeah, I had a trouble with this last year that I told Tom about. That I had a client that I wrote 3 versions of a wonderful letter for, and they ended up not using any of them, and I got really pissed. And he was like, you know what? Forget it. Next person. Move on. Thing is, they paid you money. Next thing. And I really liked his perspective on that, and so that really helped me, Tom. So thank you for saying that. You really don't have to get too worked up about it. If you got your money, next person. Yeah, exactly. You're going to process a lot of people. I do 35 clients a year. Well, I don't. It may be. I mean, and the average, billing is probably between $2,000 and $3,000, maybe a little higher now. But it's just you're going to go through a lot of people, and the people on the buying side, the clients. We have a crisis in fundraising. Directors of development are, flipping within 18 months or even faster. And that's terrible to work with those kinds of organizations. You can't get anything done. These programs take time to build. And, you get a new DOD every year or two. That's just awful. So you do go through a lot of clients. Yeah. We have a question here from Gary. What % of Tom's work is repeat rather than new clients?
And how do you get larger clients to buy larger jobs? Any insight into how harder it is to sell consultancy rather than mail packs? Thank you.
Oh. What was the second?
Lots of 3 questions. Do we do one at a time, or?
Yeah, let's do one at a time, because I missed the second one. What was the first one?
What percentage of your work is repeat rather than new clients?
It's actually most of it, but some of it is not likely to repeat, because I get invited into pre-existing, very sophisticated development departments to train them in certain things like donor centricity. You don't have to be trained twice. You'd only need it once. So those things don't repeat. But my clients like me because if they're direct mail, for instance, my big direct mail client is a hospital system, and it is a major hospital system. And they used me once in 2001, and what I wrote for them succeeded quite nicely, and they were very happy with that. But they didn't come back to me for a while. And then a new annual fund manager there tried me out in 2008, and the results that I got were so much better than the results they were getting at that time that I have worked now for them steadily all the time, year-round, since 2008. And but that's because direct mail rewards success. A lot of consulting, you can't tell whether it's succeeded or not. I don't have to do an audit twice for a client. I don't have to do a capital campaign case brochure twice. I only have to do direct mail, and in direct mail I have repeat clients. So.
I like that. And so his second question was, how do you get larger clients to buy larger jobs? Do you generally just sort of move them down that, or do they just decide to do that themselves?
It was of no interest to me trying to get them to give me more money. They gave me money for what they asked me to do, and whatever it was priced accordingly.
Right. And he asked, is there any insight into how much harder it is to sell consultancy rather than direct mail pack?
Well, you sell reputation one way or the other. I mean, nobody starts as a direct mail writer. I did learn to do it. I trained myself, but that wasn't, that's not a lot of my business, because frankly, it's exhausting. It's very anxiety producing. I do a lot of training, and that training would not have happened had I not put aside the time over the years to put out a newsletter, a how-to newsletter every 3 weeks or so, and write 5 books. I mean, that's why I'm getting the gigs I get. So you can't, what was his original question, Mazarine? Remind me.
Oh, it was like, is it harder to sell consultancy than it is to sell your services for direct mail?
I don't try to sell consultancy. I try to show that I'm an expert through the books and the newsletter, and then they sell themselves, and they come to me asking for me to consult with them.
Yeah, and I would agree that I do a lot of teaching, and then people find me, and they ask me to either teach, right, or train, or speak for them. But the majority of money that I make is through product sales. And so my model is different than Tom's in that I do a bit of e-courses, books. I mean, I have books too, but the majority of money comes through e-courses and webinar sales. I do specialize in writing like direct mail and e-newsletters, and I occasionally take on coaching clients for fundraising purposes. People have asked me to teach them how to be consultants, and I haven't really gone for that because I don't know if that's part of my core business model, and also I'm not sure how easy it would be to replicate what I do. I feel like you really have to be focused, and yeah, I work 7 days a week as well. So
yeah. Well,
it's hard, and I'm in year 6 of my career versus Tom, who started in 1990. So.
And I got to say, one of the most useful pieces of or processes I went through when I started my consulting career was, what do you really like doing? And that question was asked by a professional, and I had to answer. And that's what you want to be consulting. This is not like, I don't know what it's not like, but it's different. Good consultants generally will agree that it becomes a calling. And if you're just looking at it as a an alternative means of income, I just don't know what to. I really don't have anything to offer because
well,
it isn't
exactly. Yes. Exactly. No, it's true because, I mean, I had never worked this hard at any of my fundraising jobs, and I thought I killed myself at those fundraising jobs, like one-person shop, working super hard. One person asked, what kind of salary can you expect as a consultant? I'm like, salary? What? Every month is different. You never know. In January, I made $1,700. This month, I'm making considerably more, and last month, too. So it really depends. And then one person asked about retainers. That chance would be a fine thing. I don't usually get paid a retainer. Do you, Tom? Or
people have offered to put me on retainer. Basically, I never understood what the advantage was for the customer. There's a great advantage for the consultant because you got money in the bank, and you might even write a contract that says essentially if you don't use this money or the time that you have purchased for within 12 months, then that money goes into my whatever second home fund. In other words, they lose it. First of all, I want to keep it really simple. I sort of think of myself as a carpenter. I got my tools. I write my stuff. That's what I do. I write my audits. I'm happy with that simple life. I'm not trying to build a complex business where I squeeze margins and stuff like that. I couldn't care less. Not how I want to spend my time.
Exactly. And, Tom is right. You should do something that you would do anyway for free. And personally, I love fundraising training so much and writing so much that I would do this for free, but I'm really happy I can get paid for it. But it took me 3, 4, 5 years to become stable financially with this, to make what I would have been making full-time at a nonprofit job. The thing is, while you're working full-time somewhere, you're not working on your business. And that really sucks your energy to do this work. And so when I tried to consult on the side in previous nonprofit roles, my consulting really didn't go anywhere, and I completely exhausted myself. So be careful of that. Unless you're planning on phasing out your nonprofit job, ramping up your consulting, and people call it the side gig, people call it the side hustle, things like that. The other thing I'll say is there's this book called So Good They Can't Ignore You, and I've actually blogged about this book. So if you go to wildwomanfundraising.com and look up So Good They Can't Ignore You, one of the things that they found in terms of job satisfaction is between 1 and 5 years you see it as a job. Between 5 and 10 years you might see it as a career, and between 10 plus years you see it as a calling. And when Tom said the word calling, he finds that this is his calling, I really feel it's true for me as well. As a consultant, I feel like I'm helping a lot more people than I could help just one-on-one or even within an organization, and that makes me feel incredibly satisfied in so many ways. To teach people how to be better fundraisers, but also doing this conference was incredibly satisfying because I feel like a lot of times we get shafted as full-time development staff, and I want us to be able to succeed in our careers and be happy in our lives, not just raise a lot of money for our causes, which is important, but we're people too, So one more question from Kathy here. She said, fundraising events, sponsorship through to execution would be my focus. Any comments on that?
Better you than me.
What do you think of that?
I hate events. So better you than me. But I know people that do love events, and Shannon Doolittle, that's Shannon with one N, is one of them, and she is fabulous at it. And if you're the right personality for it, that's the problem for me. I'm not the right personality for it. But if you are, events can be hugely wonderful. And for most charities, my observation is that events are a big pain in the neck, and they would just as soon have somebody, a real hands-on consultant taking this on for them and just, kind of handing over a ton of money at the end of it or something. But if you like it, yeah, do it.
Yeah, exactly. one or two more questions here if you've got time, Tom. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Great. Rachel said, what would you charge for a board training on donor-centric communication?
Oh, I have a special fee for that. Because I expect them to be antagonistic, questioning. There'll be a couple of lawyers there that want to show their stuff, things like that. They're basically going to be untrained people. I charge $10,000 to waste my time.
Yeah. Somebody came to me recently and said, hey, could you do a whole year's worth of board trainings for us for $1,500? And I was like, no. And they're like, well, what would you charge? And I told them what I would charge, and they never came back. And I'm like, that's just as well, because I'm not willing to pay what I need. That isn't. The longer the contract, the more money it should be, even if it doesn't sound like more work. The full day of 8 hours or 8 hours spread out over 6 or 12 months, that's not good for you. So I say I don't take on contracts longer than 6 months. That doesn't fit with my business model. And then Meg asked, is there an ideal typical size of organization that has a budget for hiring direct consultants or writers versus doing it in-house? What would you say to that, Tom?
Yeah, that's a good question. You have to, I have seen, for instance, an attempt to kind of apply a metric to fundraising. Something like a fundraiser should be able to raise 5 to 10 times her salary. I don't know if that, first of all, there's so many footnotes, and it depends, and all the rest of it. It depends on whether it's a young shop or a mature shop. It depends on whether there are others in there. But, if you went to a college shop, which I worked with a university, one of the top universities in America last year, they have something like over 400 fundraisers on staff. And they're preparing for a $4+ billion campaign. With a place like that, you would say, yeah, every fundraiser we hire, there's a multiple, and we'll say your salary is $80,000. We expect, we predict, that you will raise 5 to 10 times that every year.
Okay, Tom, we have to cut it short. I'm sorry. The panel was supposed to be starting 7 minutes ago. I apologize. So I'm so sorry.
Everybody, good luck. Okay, take care.
Oh, good luck. Oh, my gosh. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, that was my fault. I should have worked on that more closely. So anyway, let's take a 2-minute break. We're going to come back for the panel. And everybody, thank you so much for being here. And Mary and Rebecca, I'm sorry to have not put you on straight on when I said I was going to. I apologize for that. And we'll be back in just 2 minutes. Hello? Hey, Mari. Thanks very much. Yep, we are back. And I have the slides. So I'm just going to, it sounds like I'm echoing on somebody. I'm going to mute Rebecca and see if that helps. It seems to have helped. So